Welcome to this week's version of Between the Lanes. I'm Tom Lane. I'm here with my 4 sons, 2 biological and 2 son-in-laws, and we're going to just talk about men stuff today. Men stuff. So, Todd, what do you think about that?
What do I think about men stuff?
Yeah, let's talk about men stuff.
Man, this could go all sorts of different directions, is what I know. But I want to say something first. I don't want the ladies to tune out. Okay, so when you hear men stuff, I want you to hear you can learn some things about your man. You can learn some things about a guy. And we're not only talking about stuff that is men stuff, but we're bringing a perspective because we're going to talk about business. We're going to talk about spiritual things and leadership, and it applies because when you say men stuff, it could get gross really fast.
Yeah,
Let's just be honest.
yeah.
Wow.
And it could get really stinky.
Yeah.
So, all right. Now, having said all that, does that help? Is that what,
Yeah, that's good.
All right.
Okay, so I want to go around the room here. So my oldest son, Todd, then my third child, second son, Tyler.
Favorite.
Yeah, favorite, yes.
The favorite third child.
For sure.
And then Braxton, married to my oldest daughter, Lisa.
Yeah.
And Brett, married to my youngest daughter, Lindsay.
Jan's favorite.
And so I want to say
Good point.
that I'm proud of each one of you. You all are truly incredible leaders in your own right, in your homes and in your businesses. And so I want to talk a little bit about that. First of all, maybe tell about just Tyler. Let me start with you. Talk about your business a minute and what you do, and just anything you want to tell about yourself.
Biography. Okay.
Yeah.
There we go. Well, we were kind of kicking around things beforehand, and I thought what may be applicable is kind of the journey to get to what I would do now. And I was relating to Todd and saying, whenever I was in college, I really had no idea what I wanted to do. I started out as a political science major, and after 1 year of that, I thought, that's not it. I thought, well, I'm going to go to the business school. And one of my first classes in business school was accounting. I was like, that's also not it. So I was like, what's in the business school but not accounting? And it was marketing. And so I said, that's it. That's it. Skated by there. When I graduated, I still had really no idea what I wanted to do, and had by a few circumstances of folks coming to speak at Baylor's, where I went to college, a couple of guys came and spoke that were with a company that manufactured roofing products. Now, if roofing products don't get you excited, I don't know what will.
Yeah, baby.
Yeah. Clearly, I was immediately drawn to it. Thought, this is what I've been looking for my whole life. This is what I want to do. Exactly. Composite decking, roofing, underlayments. I mean, we got it all. Knew nothing about any of that, but I was like, hey, I don't know what to do, but this could be a good opportunity. Took a job, got married to Marcy right after she graduated. We moved out to Florida. Didn't know anybody out there.
Okay, hold on. I got to say one thing.
Okay.
When you were waiting to go to work for that company,
Yeah.
You went through a psych evaluation. You went through a number of tests to sell roofing products.
Yeah, I was not convinced that it was not a CIA-run covert op.
Nor were your mom and I.
It's true. I still cannot confirm or deny whether it was. But it was a very extensive... In fact, you had to go take this test. We went to an industrial psychologist as part of the interview process and had to fill out like 3 hours worth of this test, and then sat with this industrial psychologist, and they asked you all about your feelings, which let's just be honest. Yeah, shoot me now. I mean, it is like pretty painful.
Men stuff.
Yeah, exactly. But somehow either I passed that test. I did get hired either way. So either I passed it or they were like, this guy's terrible. Let's put him in the roofing side rather than covert missions overseas. And so anyway, had really enjoyed that experience, learning about business, like how things are made and then how they're shipped and then sold and all kinds of stuff. Really interesting experience there. But then I moved to Houston with that same company, and I was kind of traveling around to 6 different states trying to set up distribution for this company. And had this moment. I was in Kansas City riding with a distribution sales guy to dinner, and he had picked up a call. I was in his truck, and he picked up a call, and he was talking to a contractor about this lumber package for job, blah, 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 and all this stuff. And I remember sitting on the passenger side, like looking out the window going, yeah, I have no interest in this, like long term. Like, what am I doing with my life? I should, I want to do something that interests me. And so when I got back to Houston, I decided I was going to interview some folks who had been successful in a variety of industries and try to figure out like what fit for me. And so I set up some just one-on-one meetings and would ask people, how'd you get to do what you're doing? What made you successful? What did you do different? All those things. And a product of one of those conversations led to some guys that handled investments. And I was like, investments sound cool. I don't know anything about them. I don't have any.
They sound more fun than roofing.
But they sound more fun than roofing, as far as I know.
Slightly less fun than covert ops, though.
Yes. Yeah, less on the covert ops side. So interviewed the guys that were involved in investing, and I was kind of on the scale of really cool to some might say nerdy, or like I liked to read the Wall Street Journal, like the whole thing, and actually enjoyed it. Like, it wasn't because I had to. I was like, this may be my thing, and so one thing led to, prayed about it a lot. Hey, I'm doing a career change. The job that I had was rewarding, and it wasn't high pressure. It wasn't high stress. I felt like I was doing a good job at it, but it wasn't fulfilling in a way that I wanted it to be. And so that's what led to the search, and what led me to what I do now, which I think is fulfilling in an entirely different way.
And which is what?
Which is definitely work with families to help organize their finances. We deal with investments, but also with their estate planning. If they're, a lot of times it may be a family that has a private business that they run, and then when they are going to transition that business, they're either going to transition it to other family members, or they're going to sell it. And if they sell it, a lot of times it's the first time you have a whole lot of dollars to invest rather than your net worth being tied up in the business. It may be, corporate executives that have big concentrated stock. There's sort of some complexity to the assets that they have, and helping them think through kind of the broader implications of not just are these dollars, but they're a resource, and how do you use those resources?
So, Tyler, okay, so let me just connect the long story, or not
It was
the
long.
total long story.
You're all awake.
The
Thank
journey
you.
of your life,
It's impressive.
was you being unclear what God wanted for you. You took a step. It took you into your first job out of college, and then you have this moment of like, I don't think this is what I want to do with my life. Would you say that it was like where did you see God in that moment of like career change? Did you feel like sort of that stirring in you was sort of fully just a natural thinking, or did you see God at work in that sort of prompting a change? Which, because clearly the result was a very clear God blessing on your life since then.
Yeah.
Did you recognize it in the moment as a God sort of pricking your heart for change?
Yes, I would say for sure. And I prayer is a daily function of my life, and something that kind of helps guide. And I don't think of course, prayer as just prayer requests, like, hey, God, send me more money, which is a great one. I am praying that still, but that's not the only prayer. It's really, that time to spend time with the Lord and align my thoughts with His, and like His purpose with mine.
Yeah.
And so even when I was first coming out of college, I mentioned I didn't have any idea what I wanted to do. Dad, talking to you, saying, hey, what should I be doing? Like, should I be zeroing in? Like, some people already know they're going to grad school or going to law school, or they always wanted to be a plumber or whatever it is. I don't know. I didn't have any of those things that I just knew, hey, this is what I want to do. And I remember you saying, as you pray, think through the strengths and the gifts that you've been given and see how those align to different roles that you could take on. And it doesn't mean that you're instantly going to have the role that you want or that you think best meets your needs, but is what you're doing guiding you to a place where you can see that being fulfilled in one way or another. And so that was kind of how it led. And then the prayer as it went on was, Lord, this is what I think it is. And, close the door if this is not what you have. And I remember another thing that I asked you about when seeking direction. You were kind of making the comment that God steers a moving car. And so it's not like you're sitting in an intersection going, Lord, do I go left or do I go right? I just show me the way, and there's the, that's in a movie also. But if you're moving, you may be headed to the right and then all of a sudden feel that, oh, you know what? No, this is definitely not the right way. And so I took that to heart, and I think the Lord continues to lead.
Yeah.
From my perspective, he was in a successful career in the roofing product business. Mm-hmm. And I get a call one day, and he said, yeah, I've turned in my resignation, and I'm going to work for this company, financial management company. And I said, well, are they matching what you're making? And they said,
in the future.
Not quite, but he said, but they're going to pay me for 90 days while I pass these series of tests. And if I don't pass them at the end of 90 days, I don't have a job. I went, what? So it was an issue of faith. He really believed that this is what he was supposed to do. So much so that he sort of shoved his chips all in.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's such a great picture. I was thinking about what you said there, and I heard a guy say one time about we want to know what God wants to do in our life. We're like, God, show me what my destiny is. Show me my future. Yeah. And in reality, God says, well, it's whatever. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then he tied it in Colossians where it says, whatever you do it with all your heart, working unto God and not for man. Mm-hmm. But the beginning of that verse saying, whatever you do, and it was kind of making that play. And it got me thinking about Legos. My Harrison loved Legos. Mm-hmm. And so we played Legos all for him growing up. And what you do today is you buy the box that has the picture of what you're going to build. Mm. And that's what people want. God, show me what it is that I'm going to do. They want the Lego set that has the design, the exact recipe. Here's what it's going to do. And I was contrasting that in my mind from the Legos that I had growing up, which were just basically a box of bricks. No picture of what you were going to build. But just this, and if I sort of had this image of like, that's how God actually works for us, is to say, hey, I've given you all that you need, and as you begin to build, I will build with you. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And of course, God knows the future, so he knows, but he's actually working with us with the resources he's given us, the gifts, the talents, the abilities that he's put in us, and he's saying to us, just begin to build. Yeah. And we will form what it is I've called you to do. Mm-hmm. And two different ways of looking at it. And sometimes it's just the responding to the saying yes to God and beginning to build what you have. And then you can look at it now just to make a financial comparison. You were asking, so are they going to match what? You're like, well, maybe in 90 days. Well, you've done very well for yourself. And if that had been something that held you back at that time, you'd have missed a great opportunity that was, had great provision in store for your life as well. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, for sure wasn't primarily a financial decision. Sure. I guess is what it comes down to change. And I did feel like, if I was successful, of course, this would provide for my family. And that's an important factor, no doubt. But it was really, hey, is this something that I want to learn more about? Is this something I want to do? Yeah. I want to dedicate effort to, and will be proud if I'm, knowledgeable or successful or am really helping other people as a function of what I do. Yeah. Which having roofs is also very helpful. Don't get me wrong.
Gotta have one.
I'm still a big supporter of roofs.
Big fan of roofs.
Yeah, big fan.
Okay, so Braxton, you enter into the story of our life marrying my oldest daughter. And I remember in the process of this, I'd been praying for this man that my daughter's going to marry. And as a father of girls, you know, and of boys, but it's different with girls in that you don't get to choose who they marry and whether or not they're going to be.
How is that different than with boys? You didn't get to choose who I married.
Well, I mean, it's the arranged marriage.
But with you boys, I thought, you know, if you act like knuckleheads, I'm going to
slap us around.
I'm going to slap you around. But
You have some influence on them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So you were in a career, you had a business of your own.
Yeah.
And I remember the first time I saw you, you were actually walking into a church service. I was standing up on the stage, you and Lisa together, and I'd been praying for years for the man that was going to marry her. And when you walk in, I had this impression, felt like the Lord said, this is the guy I've been preparing for your daughter. So, you know, I took notice of who you were. And I wanted to know if you were carrying a Bible. I wanted to know if you were expressive in worship. And then you were all of those things. And over the years now, you've been so much more. With 3 of our grandsons, you and Lisa produced, and your businesses. So tell a little bit about yourself and anything you want to say.
Well, to kind of go back, I mean, like Tyler said, I mean, I had no idea. You know, coming out of high school into college, just knew, hey, we're supposed to go to college, right? That's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, that's what you did.
I had no idea what I wanted to do in college. Started off with a couple different majors, just, you know, like, no, this isn't going to work. Oh, computer? Nope. That's not
Never
not
last.
going to do it. You know, so I ended up in the business, you know, field. But if you'd have told me at that time that I was going to be an entrepreneur of any kind, or told me that I would own my own business, or even for that matter, that I would be in a horizontal directional drilling industry, I'd have said,
That sounds boring.
you
sorry,
have
say that again.
You have got the wrong guy, because I had no influence of anyone who'd owned a business, never was modeled that, nothing. But, came out of college, worked for a couple, large type corporations in certain ways. And kind of like Tyler, in both of them, even in the first one, I realized within probably a year, this isn't going to be I could not see myself doing this for the rest of my life. Mm-hmm. So moved on to the next company. And it's kind of same thing, although very thankful for the job and all that it taught me. But I just started learning, not in a conceited way, was that I think I can do things, if not better, different in positive ways than some of the people who I'm working for, or some of the ways that the business were doing that. So yeah, I started my first business at the time. Cell phones were becoming something that not just the rich had, but something that was becoming where everyone could afford a cell phone, that type of thing. So I entered that business, had my own company that sold several different products there. Very exciting, but that leading into that, I wasn't engaged or had met Lisa yet. I was just a single guy. So the risk wasn't that big of a deal for me. Mm-hmm. I wasn't, didn't have mouths to feed but my own. And so went straight into that, had some success. Once I tasted that way, I can do this. I can do this on my own. I really do think God just kind of took hold of me in the way that just said, he gave me the confidence, seeing that I could actually do it. And even though it was on a smaller scale, it always led me to be thinking, what's the next thing? Well, kind of a friend of mine from church, he worked for a guy who did cable TV installs and stuff like that. And he had just started getting into this industry where they were putting underground utilities, using these horizontal drilling machines. And again, I mean, no clue what it was. Never done a real day's construction in my life. And, you know, he said, you should come check this out. I mean, this thing's crazy. You know, you can guide this drill bit underground and all this kind of stuff. So I just thought it was cool. And I wish there was some, you know, really rational way that I thought about this, you know, like I do remember praying about it. But, you know, it wasn't this, you know, pros and cons type thing. Literally, my friend's like, hey, maybe you and me should get a machine and do this. And I said, yeah. Okay.
Let's do it.
Good.
Were there overalls involved? Was it the overalls that
I never wore overalls, not once.
Wow.
Disappointing.
But literally went from a corporate type job to kind of selling that to a partner that my portion of it. And within a week was on a job site with mud all over me, drilling, getting, you know, the whole bit. And I had this focus. I knew that it was going to be a profitable business. At that time, fiber optic had just become the new thing. You know, copper wire phones were the thing of the past, and they were putting it city to city all over the entire United States. So I knew that if I would stick with this, you know, but there were many times getting up in the morning, just being like, you know, throwing on the work boots, just, I mean, like, you know, it was surreal almost. Like, wow, this is what I do now. You know, this is what I do.
A driller.
And so, you know, that led to a pretty good time frame of doing that business until the next thing came along. But the cool thing is that the next business and then the next business were all correlated with the same industry. Yeah. I just was able to see little anomalies or things in the, you know, whether it would be a product I was buying or something that I was like, hey, you know, I think I can sell this or do a better job, or it's too expensive and I think I can buy it for less. And so, yeah, God just kind of opened up those doors into what today's been really fun ride, you know?
One of the, I know one of the companies that Elon Musk owns is called the Boring Company.
Yeah.
And is it true that you mentored him?
You know, when he was a young boy, no.
I just didn't know.
That would be a real cool thing to say.
I heard that.
I just wondered if that's where he got his start too.
I think he tweeted, Braxton's an inspiration. Something to that effect.
I thought that might be the case.
One of the things both of you are saying that I believe is when God is leading our life, he moves us into situations for the purpose of giving us experience and testing certain areas of our life and our relationship with him. And, you know, you can easily think, okay, I know what I'm doing, versus saying, I'm here to gain some experience. And if you apply yourself well, you can take everything that you learn and experience to the next place that you go. And I think that's what you've done, Braxton. And I've just been so impressed to watch you create businesses and, you know, and everything seems to me, everything that you put your hands to has succeeded and succeeded well, including your family.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
I want to ask you about you said about, you know, when you were single and didn't only your mouth to feed, the risk was low. Okay, that changed. You got married.
Right.
You started having kids. Talk about, and yet you still continue to develop other businesses. What changed in your thinking, or how did you weigh now that risk against what life circumstances you were having at that point?
Yeah, I remember. So past the first, you know, the construction side, I'd been doing that for a good 8 to 10 years before the next real opportunity arose. But I remember talking to Lisa and saying, I think I have the next thing. I mean, I think it's gonna, you know, like I think I want to do this,
Was it electric cars?
I remember her.
Were you mentoring Elon again?
Yeah, that was right after, I don't even want to say it on here. It'll be some
TVs.
clip.
Yeah, sorry.
But I remember her just going, oh no. Like, is this going to is all our money going to go into this? Like, is this going to be like, okay, cut back and all that? I can remember kind of thinking that. And I was like, yeah, it might actually, but she was always a trooper. So I would say this, for anybody thinking, I've always wondered if I could be an entrepreneur or if I, and I've had the pleasure of mentoring some young guys that just say, I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to work for myself. I want to have that freedom in life. How do I do it? I was like, well, that's not,
Well, you send $523 to me for this program.
Yeah, exactly. That's actually
four
a good
installments.
idea, Tyler.
Four installments.
Yeah. You,
bro, I'll market
and
for you.
Could be just like me.
You too could be an entrepreneur.
But there isn't a simple recipe to it.
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest similarities I've found that I've seen in entrepreneurs is risk. Your risk factor, if that's how much really are you willing to risk your money or other things? How tight are you holding on to the things that you have? And, that's got to be high up on everybody, that's really, done well in entrepreneurship of any kind, is they're willing to risk. They have a high level of risk in what they're about to start.
Would you connect risk with faith? And do you see those similarly, or when you think about your entrepreneurial ability and the spiritual side of you, are those similar to you?
100%. Obviously being a Christian, it's always been woven into what I'm doing. Prayer was definitely a part of every business I've started. Lord, am I hearing you, or is this me? Am I just excited about this?
Right.
Or is this actually, you speaking here? Yeah. And so I've always brought it before my wife. I've always talked to other people about it and gotten that confirmation that this is of the Lord and to go for it, The kind of last big thing I did, I remember we were on our way to church, Lisa and I, kids at this point, and I had gotten this idea within that day. And it just really struck me yes. This is something I should do. And I remember thinking about it, driving to church. I remember being in worship at church, and I was having this dialogue with God. I'm sorry that I'm not focusing on worship right now. I really remember having that because I'm thinking about this thing, right? And, later after that service, I think it was a week or so later, someone had talked to Lisa and said, I saw your husband. I'd never met him before, but she saw a light bulb over my head.
Wow.
She's like, I just saw something excited. And I was like, whoa.
Wow.
Are you but that I was already convinced that I was going forward with it, but it helped Lisa to be like, okay, that was confirmation that we moved forward.
Wow.
And so 100%, if you're not praying about it and just going for it, it's even more of a risk, for sure.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, Brett, you come into my life, into our family.
Like a storm.
Daughter, Lindsay, pulling into the driveway from college, and you pull in right behind her. And I'm going, who's this guy? He's blocking the driveway here.
Why is he driving so fast?
and you've been helping Lindsay with her computer that I was unaware of. And you helped to unload the car. And all of a sudden, you're in our life. And then first impression I got was you made an appointment to come and see me in my office. And this was a couple of days after unloading the car. And you said, yeah, I'd like permission to date your daughter. And I thought, well, does my daughter know you're here? I mean,
Is she giving her permission?
yeah. And you said, yeah, I mean, yes, she knows. And I said, okay, well, let me talk to her. But I want you to go slow because she's just coming back from college, and just take it slow. And at the time, I was impressed. You had a business of your own. You started out of college, and you were a contract player, but committed to our church. And you were playing bass on the weekend. And I thought to myself, okay, need to check this out a little bit.
Was it a red flag that he was playing bass? Or did you?
I liked the fact that he was playing bass.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Clarify.
But it was just a 4-string bass, and that was not as impressive as a 5
No,
or
I was
6.
playing five.
Oh, you were playing.
Yeah,
Oh, well, okay.
I don't touch a 4-string. Oh.
Okay, so with that much intro, take it from there. How'd you feel coming in?
Yeah, it was a little bit overwhelming to go, meet with the head honcho of the place that I was just, playing bass for and serving. But yeah, it was. And I remember you saying, "It's great. Just do me one favor and take things slow." And I think maybe set an appointment maybe 4 weeks later and said, "Hey, we need to meet again." Because I know you said to take things slow, but I really am not sure how to do that because I want to honor that, but I really feel like I'm going to marry your daughter. So what would you have me do here? And so that was a little
That was slow because you wanted to have that meeting in 2 weeks.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
For
you
sure.
waited
So-
4.
Twice
Yeah,
as long.
so I
as
felt like I met it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you met the slow. Yeah.
But it was, so then you said, well, okay, let's talk about let's talk about a courtship.
Yep.
And what does that look like? And so then we began meeting together, probably maybe once a month or so at McDonald's, Mickey D's over at
Yeah.
Diet Coke,
Yeah.
back when you used to drink them.
Yes.
And I remember I'd never had anyone so intentional with wanting to pour into me. So, we would show up and you would say, "Do you have anything you want to talk about?" If you do, it's great. You have any questions you want to ask? If not, I got some agenda items, which come to find out that is a normal thing that you did with all your kids.
That's what I did to every
Was
one
it
of my
unique?
sons.
Yeah. that-
So I didn't know that, at the time, but looking back on it, it's cool that even from the beginning, you treated me like a potential son, one day. So yeah, I would just, cherish those times and get to ask questions and get to, a lot of some of the stuff you've written in your books, pouring into me, and just thought about things I'd never really thought about things like that way, like budgeting your time, like, your money, just setting a budget for your time because it's a limited resource. And so, yeah, it was awesome. It was a whirlwind. But yeah, I knew I wanted to marry her from pretty much our first date. So I went maybe a month later and bought a ring. Like, let's do this. And then come to find out I had to sit on it for about a couple of years, but that's a whole nother story. But
Yeah. To you, I want to say though that to your credit, both you and Lindsay were committed to following a process that enabled Jan and I to really throw our full support behind the two of you. I think your parents wondered, "We got a great son. What's your problem?" And it wasn't really about you so much to us. It was about making sure that Lindsay was in a place that she was making a right decision.
Yeah.
And you were patient and respectful, and I really appreciate that. I remember early on when you were dating, I was praying about you one day, and I don't know, maybe it's in the first month or two, and I felt like the Lord said to me, "Brett is unconventional." And when I got that word unconventional, I realized Lindsay's unconventional. Compared to any of my other kids. She wasn't like any of the others. She was unconventional. And then the Lord said,
We use different words.
Unconventional. That's a good word.
and I'm
to say.
going to I'm going to use them in unconventional ways to reach their generation. And so I just held on to that. I told Jan, I really feel like this is what I got today. And I think that weekend in church, I saw your dad. And, I greeted him and said, hey, how are you, Bruce? And he said, well, what do you think of these kids? Isn't that amazing? I said, yeah, it really is. And your dad said, that Brett, he's just unconventional. And I thought, that's right. I did hear that about him.
I heard it from the Lord.
Yes. And it just confirmed something in me. I saw in you in those 2 years the character that and the passion that you had for the Lord and for my daughter and for our family, and it really made it easy to fully embrace you.
And even had kids unconventionally. 3 at a time.
Yes, 3, yes.
That is unconventional. I have a question because I think an important part of the story, because today, you're like you're a technology, digital strategist is kind of how I would kind of describe you. And obviously worked with you a long time at the church, and now you're in kind of a new media venture and doing that. But you've got an entrepreneurial spirit, and you started when you entered into this picture. Do you want to tell everybody what your business was at the time?
Yeah, I was a snow cone mogul. Had a thriving snow cone empire. So it was funny. I was thinking about both of you guys, Tyler and Braxton, about what you said about out of college. I think that's probably the typical story. I'm not sure what we're gonna do, especially if you graduate with a business degree. It's like, and I graduated with a finance degree, which is a part of our business school, and I just wanted to be an entrepreneur because that's what my dad was. So how hard can that be? That's what I'll be that. And so one day after we graduated, I was up and I went to school in Oklahoma, and I was back up there visiting a friend, and he goes, "Oh, this is a new snow cone stand that just popped up. I wasn't here last summer. Let's try." Or no, they said, the first summer that they were here was last year, and they're back. Awesome. Let's go get a snow cone. So we did. And the guy was like chatty, the guy working it. He's like, man, this is, I think my friend said, now, this is your second year? I said, yeah. Man, this is awesome. Like, I did the first year, and like, you can make $50,000. I'm like, $50,000? Like, man, in the summer. I'm like, let's do it. And so it was kind of like one of those things where like, should we start a snow cone stand? Like, it was the guy that was with me, and like, yeah, okay. So like within probably 2 weeks, I had bought a concession trailer and got my dad to co-sign on the loan because I didn't have, like, how do I buy a concession trailer? But hey, Dad, can you help me? So him to co-sign on the loan, started, the LLC, and then got the snow cone trailer. And then I'm like, well, now I got to find a place to park it. Guess I should have, thought about that beforehand. But this is going to be awesome. There'll be plenty of places to park it. Then I ran into all the city ordinances. Like, you can't park a trailer
wherever you want.
Yeah, wherever you want. And I'm like,
insane.
What? Yeah, like that this guy had a trailer up in Oklahoma. And I was like, well, so maybe they were a little bit, lighter on the ordinances than Norman. But like I was getting turned down by the cities. And like that was a pain. Finally found a place to park it and was up and running. And I think it was maybe 4 weeks in, get a knock on the snow cone door from the city and said, the permit you have is a temporary permit. Like you can't just set this thing up permanently. It's meant for like the little trailers at Lowe's and Home Depot selling hot dogs. Like that's what this permit's for. Yeah. I'm like, well, the people said I could. Anyway, so I had to pivot that into found a place, like a brick and mortar place I could rent just to get through the season, try to recoup investment. And then after that, ended up buying a snow cone stand that had been around for like 20 years that I went to as a kid. It was an old man that was wanting to retire and get out of it. And I ended up buying it and ran that for about 4 years or so with a staff. But that's really where, honestly, I learned a lot of the kind of the backbone of business, just taxes and employees and QuickBooks and how to just manage the inventory and all that stuff. Maybe they teach it now in college, but when I went to business school, they didn't teach QuickBooks and any of that stuff about taxes. And so kind of got to learn in a crash course in a small, safer, lower risk environment, about business. But I also never forget meeting with you. And I said, I think I'm going to marry your daughter. And you said, and you're going to provide for her on snow cones? I'm like, good
Tiger's
point.
blood.
Good
That's
point.
amazing.
Good point.
Good
Have
point.
you ever had a tiger's blood?
Yeah, but our coconut cream is so good.
It's going to take us international.
Yeah, so that's kind of when I
It was
pivoted.
one of the first challenges I gave you that you're going to need to find a career different than snow cones and playing bass
Yeah.
to be able to provide for my daughter.
Well, and I was like, around all the time, because I think when we started hanging out, it was the snow cone stand was fully kind of staffed, and so I was just like he's like, what does this guy do? Like, does he ever work? And so I'm like, yeah, it's probably not a sustainable,
And yet, come to find out, that was the genius of it all. You were like onto something. You had a team working for you. You were just like hanging out.
Yeah, but I wasn't making any money because it was all going to pay them.
Okay, well,
So I might, had low living expenses.
once again, the single guy.
Yeah, that was the point. You could do that.
Yeah.
And then, to Dad's point of, are you going to be able to support a family? I'm like, let me carry the one. Yeah, I don't think so.
I just remember when they started dating at first, Brett continues to this day, has always been on the more stylish end, certainly of me or the males of my family. No offense to anybody else.
A little slightly offended.
Well,
a little offense taken.
What's up with that?
understand. Truth can be offensive too. It's okay. But I do remember, like, one of the first times I met him, he was wearing some jeans that had a design on the pocket. I'm not going to say it was bedazzled, but it was pretty close.
So they were so cool back then.
So instantly, my nickname for him to Lindsay, of course, was Fancy Pants. I was like, oh yeah, how's Fancy Pants doing? Whatever. This is, of course, before I knew him. And then it was revealed that was really just my jealousy that I couldn't
That
pull
you had no
off.
style. You couldn't pull off
Yeah,
Fancy
he
Pants.
actually could pull that off. But
I remember kind of confiding in some of the men in the family of just wondering, like, so does Jan hate all of y'all's your significant others, or am I just the lucky one?
and our advice was, be her tech support.
Yeah.
And she will love you.
And
He's wormed his way right into her
doors
heart.
have
Now you're her
opened.
favorite.
Now, the go-to.
Well, there's a connection sort of between you and Todd in that his youngest daughter, Evelyn, seemed to worm her way into your heart. You want to tell that story?
Yeah. Well, yeah. So I grew up. There wasn't a lot of kids in my family. So when I joined this family, or started to be around this family, it was like a little bit it was shocking because there was just a lot of human beings everywhere. And so I would find myself just quietly retreating to a back room that was quiet and just like get on my computer just to like. I'm a little bit of an introvert, and so it had, there's some adjustment getting used to. But one of those things was just all the kids. There was a lot of kids, and there wasn't in my family. It was just my sister and I, and we didn't have cousins around, and we didn't have small kids around, so it was new. But yeah, Evelyn, she was super cute. She was, I think, probably the newest, newest baby kid at the time. And there was one time we were hanging out. I think it was maybe for Easter, and she was maybe 2-ish, and so I mean, it was always mass chaos during Lane, events, especially holidays, and I see her kind of, walking out around the corner by herself, and she walks out and goes into the garage, and so no one really notices, so I kind of walk over there and kind of open the garage and just kind of watch her. She walks out, kind of just right outside the garage, right outside from under the garage, and just kind of standing there. I'm like, hey, Evie. Looks over. I'm like, what are you doing? She's like, I came outside to get the TT out of my body. I go, Todd. And so they come out. Todd and Belinda come out and, talking to her, what are you doing, Evie? And, are you need to go to the bathroom? And, so she comes walking, they come walking back inside. She walks by me, just gives me this glare and goes, hey, Frep. Thanks a lot for telling on me. So
for then on, you've been known as Frep.
Yeah. So she, to this day, still calls me Frep.
And she's 17.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
And somehow she wormed her way into your heart. I think she became your favorite. You became her favorite.
Yeah.
No offense, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Well, it's
mean,
still
I'm a
not
lot of
fair
favorites,
today.
you know.
Yeah.
And then we have our youngest, Hunter, who is so much like Evie, like so much. It's just hilarious. Their personalities are very similar. So a lot of times we find ourselves cracking up at Hunter and going, "That's so something," an Evelyn thing. Yeah.
You said something that I'm kind of, you and Braxton both, but then it would apply for Tyler and I, our wives, and that is the idea of like joining a family, you know, as an in-law, but embracing it as your family. You know, you called him dad. You know, you call him dad, and it's not to take away from your own parents, but it's more of a reflection of a family dynamic, and I think that's I don't know, something that I've been interested in, having now added a son-in-law to my family, and realizing that to create a family that I think many people want, you have to embrace the idea of not putting a bunch of hurdles and boundaries for you to join in the family. In other words, I told JD as he joined our family, and I think I got it from you. I think you told these guys, and certainly told our wives. But I told him, hey, as soon as, in fact, at the wedding, at the reception, I said, you now call me dad. I would prefer that. And he fully, I said, that doesn't take anything away from your parents and your family, but I said, it's more a reflection for me to you of how I see you joining our family. And I think there's something about creating a family atmosphere that has allowed that to be where you guys are sons to him and brothers to us. And, you know, being able to create that and allow the atmosphere to say, I see you. And this is what you would say. You said this to Belinda. I see you as a daughter. You know, there's nothing else you have to do to be that, and say the same thing to you guys. So,
well, I was thinking about that, you know, so before, while we were just still dating, and it was one of the times where we were meeting at McDonald's, I remember, and it was in the season of, you know, is this ever going to happen? You know, you know, we joked about Jan, but you know, you and I met a lot, and she was on her own journey of coming to, you know, getting a piece about this, and the Lord speaking to her about me and all that. And so I remember asking, like, you know, I just, or even saying, I can't picture, it's so hard for me to picture, that there will be a day that I'm fully accepted into the family like that. I want that, but that's really, it's so far from that right now is what it feels. And you said, even then, before we were engaged or anything, you said, if you are the one for Lindsay, and if you end up joining our family, then you will be my son. You will be our son. You will, and myself and Jan will see you that way. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna have to take your word for it. But like, so before, and then when we, I think it was maybe even on our wedding day, maybe, I think is when you said this similar thing, or maybe the rehearsal dinner, but you know, hey, I want you to call me dad if you feel comfortable, like I see you that way. But from the very beginning, that was always the intention, is that I'm going to see you as my son. Right. And just being intentional, communicating that made me go, oh, well, yeah, I don't know that I would have not thought it that way, but it gave me permission to then fully embrace this family, because I knew from the top, that's how you saw me. Yeah. Which was cool.
Yeah, I remember you saying to JD, and it reminded me of this process. And I think it was at the rehearsal dinner, maybe you said, when you and Olivia met, I told you could call me Mr. Lane. and then when you got engaged, I said you could call me Todd. And tonight, I say you can call me Dad. Yeah, what a migration of relational dynamic that took place that is brings real clarity, I think, and an embracing into the family. And that's the way that I feel. I really do feel that you two are every bit as much sons to me as my own biological sons. And I really love you very much and appreciate the way that you have treated my daughters.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So Todd, now I'm back to you, and I want to say, when you graduated from college, I don't think ministry was ever at that point. You were like these guys, you know. What am I going to do? Where am I going to go? And you went into a corporate job and did well in corporate job, taking various roles. And so I remember in the process of this, I remember thinking when Belinda came on the scene, Mom and I were taking evening walks, and I noticed something was different with you, and I said to Mom, you know, Todd's in love. She said, no. And I said, no, I think he's in love. In fact, I was awakened at like 2 a.m, wide awake, with him on my mind, and I think something significant has taken place. She goes,
which by the way never happens. You're never awoken at 2 a.m. So clearly that was
when
God.
I'm out. For
sure.
I'm out.
Yeah.
But I was wide awake, and she went. So I said, well, I'm going to call him and find out. So you want to take it from there?
Yeah. Well, you did. And, you know, there's something about having a dad who's really close with the Lord. Man, you just can't get away with anything. You can't get anything past when the Lord reveals things.
It's a blessing.
It's a blessing, I think. No, this was a huge blessing. So he had called, you called that day. And the night before, Blinn and I were together, and it was kind of like the college experience. You're just, you know, there's no hours, you know, there's no you know, parameters on time. And we were together, and where our relationship was at that point, basically that was the first time I told her I love her. And so that night I told her I loved her right around the time where you were awakened. And it was kind of just a very confirming thing, you know, one, for the Lord to sort of put that on your heart to say something significant has happened. I already knew, I mean, I won't go into the whole story, but I had loved her kind of from the first time I ever saw her. But to this point, telling her that, it was pretty good confirmation for you to call me and go, I felt like the Lord said something significant happened last night. So she and I moved quickly from I love you to being engaged, and then married kind of within, you know, about a year time frame. So, but yeah, it was like you guys, business degree, finance degree, and yet didn't go into the financial sector at all. And followed the journey. But I had a little bit more clarity of what I wanted to do. I had said when I was a teenager, I want to be the president of a company. That's what I wanted to do. And I didn't care what company, I didn't care what field, like I had, but that's what I want to do. So I went into a corporate job, and, you know, it's not like I had set my sights on, you know, being the president of the company, but I certainly was in the climb the corporate ladder mentality. And, I would say now how I've labeled it is I was kind of a spiritual opportunist. If something opened up, Blinn and I, of course, we were married right out of college, so we were building our lives together at that time. I was married, then got a job. And any door that opened, we would pray about it. But kind of like you said, Braxton, it was like, I know I was praying all the time about it, but it was like if something opened up, it was I stayed with the same company for 7 years, but they opened up a lot of different doors and opportunities to move and to do new things. And so that allowed me to experience a lot in that 7 years. And then yet, after the end of 7 years, God had a very, very key moment that made it clear He had something else for me, and that moved me into ministry after that. And I think, you know, when I think about kind of the common theme, you know, we have the opportunity now of looking back, you know, at our ages. You know, here we're sons, but yet we've got all of our own children. We've got, you know, you can look back in hindsight now. And you realize how old you are when you realize how much hindsight you have. And you can see the sort of the common thread in all of our stories really is not totally knowing what God had next, but willing to take the next step. And I think the thing that I sort of look in that is just it's the faithfulness of God. That God isn't really calling us to do something. He wants us to be present with Him and be in His will. And as we're in His will, he then takes us to the next thing. And I think about the car example you gave, Tyler, of just we're moving and he directs us as we move. And the story of Abraham stepping out, God calling him, and the way that verse reads is God said, I want you to go to the land that I will show you. And you think about the progression of that statement. He didn't say, I want you to go to this land.
Yeah.
He said, I want you to go to a land that I will show you. It was a faith statement of you begin to move, and as you move, I will show you what's next. And I think we can all look at our lives right now and go, in hindsight, I look back and go, I didn't have a clue it would end up here and that I would be doing this and it would look like this. But it was a progression of saying yes to the Lord and walking with him that got us to a place of going, man, we've got a good family, and certainly not without its challenges, and we all have our trials, and raising kids is hard and all of those things, but God is faithful. And he's faithful, and when we say yes to him and we take steps with him, he provides all that we need in each of those challenges.
So true. Yeah. So true. Well, I will say this, that when I recognize each one of you are individuals, and yet there's a common thread that I see among each of you, and that is there's a desire for excellence in everything that you do. I've noticed it in each of you. It's reflected, and then there's an integrity to your life. For instance, Brett, I remember one of the things early on that impressed me. We had told Lindsay that she had just come back from college. You just starting dating. Lindsay, we need you curfew. We're going to set a curfew. What? No, I don't need to. I'm too old for. Well, you're back at our house now, so we're going to set a curfew. Either I'm going to set it or you're going to set it. Do you want to set it? She said, okay. 1 o'clock. Okay. 1 o'clock. Well, Jan and I had said it's going to be midnight, but I fudged it an hour because I gave her the choice. So, well, the next night, she and Brett are at the house, and 1 o'clock just blows right by. Of course, I'm sound asleep. So the next morning, Mom says to me, they didn't abide by the curfew at all. And I went, what? He was here, and I don't even know what time he left, but it was way after.
Just like
Just like her, yeah. She's going to love watching this.
And I said, okay, tonight I'll watch it. If they stay past 1, you just wake me up. So,
I mean, the Lord didn't wake you up?
no,
Sure, he woke. Hey,
In
Lord
this
woke me
case,
up for me.
yeah, well,
his spirit was not disturbed.
Lord didn't care about this one.
Lord didn't care about this.
so she comes in at like 1:03. He's still here.
This
And
guy.
I said, what?
I mean,
And
can't
what?
be
The audacity.
Yeah. And I said, okay. Okay. So I step out of the bedroom and look into the family room. They're on the couch like this, and I'm standing in a doorway where Lindsay, or at least Lindsay, can see my eyes. And I went, just pointed at my watch, went like this. She goes, and I went back in the bedroom and I told Mom,
Got it.
no
Nailed
problem.
it.
He'll be gone in 10 minutes. If he's not gone, wake me up. So I'm right back to sleep. In 10 minutes, she goes, he's still here. He's still. I said, okay. So I had my special sleeping morphing shorts on.
Yeah.
Yes, I
Good
remember.
story in itself. Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Prepared for a fire in the neighborhood.
with the
at
belt
time.
and everything.
With the belt. Tucked in, obviously. Yeah. Looking sharp.
You never know when the house might burn down.
No, so
You
true.
need to
You don't
be
want
out
to
of
be
the
caught
car.
in
Jokes on all those
anything
people.
Anyway, so I walked out and pulled up a chair right behind the couch. And
Y'all continue.
yeah, and Lindsay goes, Dad, what are you doing? And I said, well, I'm obviously there's something riveting that's happening here because 1 o'clock was your curfew. And Brett went, what? And I said, oh yeah. She agreed 1 o'clock would be the curfew. And Brett said, Lindsay, you never told me that.
Ooh, threw him under the bus.
And I said,
Like it.
oh, she didn't. And Brett looked at me and he said, I'll be gone in just a minute. And I'm sorry. And so I just got up and went back into the bedroom and I said, It's taken care of.
And he left it for us.
And he left and never violated that curfew again. It's that kind of integrity that it just, it was a part of the process of endearing himself into the family. But I see that in each one of you. There's an integrity of things. You live your life according to principles, and your word is your bond. And I believe those things, and so there's a mutuality of respect and connection that we have.
Well, I think one of the things, like if the party in the house around the holidays is going on a little later, I see a real similarity between you and Braxton in that, around 9:30, there's something else calling your name, and they're probably going to pray in secret so that others don't see you because you don't want anybody else to.
At least they don't French goodbye and just are gone and never.
That's true. That's true.
Before we end, I want to ask just a couple of questions, because of my 15 grandchildren, I have 8 girls and 7 boys. So I'm going to start with Oh, that's right. Now, of my 16 grandchildren, I have 8 boys and 8 girls.
There you go.
Mashed it up.
And so, Braxton, I want to start with you because you're a father of all boys.
Right.
So what is it that you focus on as a dad of boys to develop your sons to be godly men, to be leaders, to be potentially husbands that treat their wives right? Todd, you've got a son. Brett, you've got a son. You got 2 sons, Tyler. So chime in here. What's the dynamic that you're concentrating on?
I mean, I think the first thing that comes to me is just being intentional. I remember throughout the journey at different ages, even saying, like, within myself, am I doing enough? Is there something I could be doing better? Right. So I would evaluate myself and, have I spent enough time? Am I pouring into this child as much as this child, spreading it out equally, et cetera, right? And so I would say the first thing I did was to analyze myself, put the mirror back on you,
Yep.
And really just being in tune with each kid because they're all so different. I remember, just back in the days when I put the boys to bed, so that was in the very beginning something that Lisa and I never had any issue on. I wanted to put the boys to bed. And although some nights it was
really early,
oh man,
so that I could get more sleep.
I know
long
you haven't had dinner
day,
yet, but
and all that kind of stuff. And
Dad, it's still light outside. I don't care.
yeah,
You're going to sleep.
The grind of putting them to bed, right? But there are so many nuggets and times that I can think of right now. And those times when you get them alone and quiet, even though they weren't quite ready to go to bed most of the time, that you could speak into them individually, ask them questions, get to know them down to their core, about what they liked, what they didn't like, what, those type of things. And I remember every kid was so different, one would want a story every night, like every night. One would be like, Dad, I'm just ready to go to bed.
Dad,
Great.
Let's go.
You pray and good night, buddy. All those different types of things. But in just the, from every age, from birth on up, I just was intentional to pay attention to what I felt like each one of them needed from me, from their mom, everybody, help in school, help with certain things, and every kid's been different. So I would say, especially with all boys, so I didn't have that one special daughter or whatever that was different. It was equally in their own certain ways, giving them what they needed.
Yeah.
And although it wasn't, I'm certain it wasn't always perfectly everything they needed, but I just remember thinking, what, Lord, just speak to me. If I'm not getting it, show me. You know, make it evident that wow, okay, I need to spend more time in one certain way or another.
I was just going to say, I remember growing up, one of the things that really annoyed me was, whether it was in school or whatever, that you're saying of you're either an influence or you're being influenced. That's not what annoyed me. That was great. It was. However, when it came to like the practical implication of that, where it was, hey, Tyler, how are you behaving? How are you influencing other people? And you're held to a higher standard, which was the statement that annoyed me. Because that's fun if you're like, yeah, I'm at a higher standard and you feel better than everybody else. But when everything you're doing is being scrutinized and it doesn't matter if it seems like a very small thing, you're talking too much, you know, you're being too loud, you're speed walking when you should be regular walking, whatever it is. You know, like, hey, this is not wrong. You know, this is not bad. It's like, yeah, no, it's not that that's absolutely bad in itself, but you're held to a different standard. And so it's not the same thing. And I'm sure y'all do this more perfectly than I do, but that is still what I tried to reinforce to my boys today, that they have, you know, great friends. Some are better influences than others. And my statement to my boys is always that the expectation for you is different than my expectation of your friends. And so it's not going to be fair sometimes, you know, honestly, the way that I view what you do and how you influence other people. And I think that there's value in that, even though it's not easy. And sometimes, like it was for me when I was younger, that's annoying. Sometimes it's hard to deal with.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking about, Braxton, you were talking about being intentional, and this is probably a similar word to that, but I think what I've tried to do, and I wouldn't put this just on Harrison, but this would be on my Olivia and Evelyn too, the three of my kids, is just the presence, being present, being a present dad. I think you've been a very present dad for all of you have. But I think there's something about dad being present. And what I've experienced is that requires a lot of sacrifice, things that you don't do. And Tyler, you and I were talking about just the other day of like, I remember, because you were saying this about yourself and trying to find something, but I remember definitely long seasons where people were like, so what's your hobby? And I'm like, I got no hobby. Like I got three kids and my hobby is whatever they're doing. And I mean, I always felt bad about that because like, I probably need a hobby. But there was a point at which I realized I've actually chosen not to have a hobby because that would pull me away, and I want to be more present for my kids. And, you know, my intention in that has been I want to capture their hearts. And I saw a quote the other day that I was like, that describes what I hope to have created my kids. And there was two statements, and the first statement was, you know, kind of relating to your father, something bad has happened. I don't want to tell dad. That's the first statement. The second statement is something bad has happened. I need to tell my dad.
Yeah, that's it.
And that's the one that I'm like, when you're present in their lives, you've worked to capture their hearts. What you're trying to communicate to them is whatever goes on in your life, I want you to know when it's happened, you can come to dad. And that's what I've hoped to create in my kids.
That's really good.
Yeah.
And there's not really a disparagement between those two statements. You know, if you're present with them, they don't want to disappoint you. Right. So if they've messed up, they don't want to tell you. But if you've been present and loving on them, then the thing that is there is, but I got to tell my dad. I mean, who would I tell if I didn't tell him? Yeah. So Henry.
Yeah, for Henry. So it kind of goes with all of our kids too, like you said. But I think with him especially, he's a sensitive boy. He's awesome. He's all boy, loves sports, but he's super sensitive and in tune. So for him, we've just been trying to teach him how to hear the Holy Spirit, how to hear the Lord. Because there's only so much that we can do, if we can pour into him to actually hear for himself the voice of the Lord, and then help him steward that and guide it and help him, hone that in. That's going to go a lot further than, all the things that we could teach, directly. And so I think for him, especially because he is so sensitive and he wants to hear the Lord and he wants to try to exercise that gift, to be able to pour into him in that way, it's been pretty cool to see him respond and see the Lord speak to him and see him hear the Lord accurately and then help him understand those things. Also being able to, in the moment when challenges happen and disappointments happen, taking the time to be intentional and talk through those things and relate it to like spiritual principles, and just being able to go, hey, buddy, I know I'm sorry that the tryout didn't turn out the way you wanted it, but that things are going to happen like that. There's disappointment, and that's okay. It doesn't mean we give up. It means that we're going to try again next year, and we're going to and what's cool, even in the specific situation I'm thinking of, is he did another tryout for a baseball team a few weeks later, and a coach walked up to me and said, "Hey, is that your boy?" I said, "Yeah." I said, he was at the first tryout, right? Yeah. I said, he's got something on him. Like, he has a raw, natural talent and ability. Can I have your number? And so I was able to talk to, Henry about that, to say, listen, the Lord, he sees you and he sees your hard work. You are seen first and foremost. This is the Lord's way of seeing you. Secondly, just because the first thing didn't try out or didn't pan out the way we all wanted it to and thought it was going to, you never know what God's doing on the back end. So, being able to proactively and constantly speak, values and speak the Lord, just biblical truths and principles, in everyday moments.
And
like
funny
that.
how that can also apply in your life.
Yeah,
And my life.
Yeah.
You're like, hey,
like I am
many
definitely
times I
learning
have
this now.
been giving my sons great advice, awesome advice.
Spot on.
And I've been thinking, wow, this is actually good advice for me too.
Yeah, I'm like, thanks for the reminder,
this.
Lord.
Yeah, exactly.
exactly.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, Todd. So you're new into the son-in-law business.
And business is good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
business is good. You got a good one.
I
That's
got
for
a good
sure.
one. Yes,
So, in the
6
6
months.
months, any pearls of wisdom you want to share that you've learned? What's different about a son-in-law versus a son?
Maybe I'm too soon to find that out, or maybe I just have been really blessed with a great son-in-law, and this is our first. We haven't gotten through the Christmas season. This was our first Christmas to have him as part of the family, and it was everything I had hoped and prayed for. And going back to the statement I was making before about just creating the atmosphere to go, hey, you're now a part of our family. And that doesn't mean you've disconnected from the family you came from, but we've added you to our family. And that being able to be something that I could communicate, but he reflected something back to me that just blessed us. And that was, him hearing that, he said, I want that. So I could desire that, but if he doesn't embrace it as well, then it breaks down. I mean, he's got to want to join into the family as well. And I'm so thankful. Blend and I are so thankful that that's the attitude he has. And he comes from a fantastic family. So we're equally joyful that Olivia gets to join his family.
Yeah.
There's no subtraction in this. It's only addition all around. And he's really just, what you hope when your families join. That's why the whole idea of being equally yoked is so critical, because you're joining families.
Yeah.
And, recognize there's a lot of different ways that could go. And I think in terms of how some families have experienced it and so forth, and I think you are expressing something, even in your story of Brett, and you have a story like that for each of us of your intentionality in parenting. And that didn't go away when we turned 18. You didn't go, well, you're an adult now. Off you go.
Good luck.
Yeah, good luck. No, you were parenting into the point at which, like, hey, now you've got a spouse. Okay, now your family begins. But until then, you're in my family.
Yeah.
And you changed how you parent. You didn't parent like we were 12 years old, but you were involved and active. And I tried to embrace that same thing. And in doing so, I think what it created, what I'm hopeful, what it's created in my kids is a desire to have that, to be connected to our family, and to seek out a spouse, as Olivia did with JD, who would want that as well. And so I don't think I've got any magical trick in a part of that. Just very blessed and very thankful. And seeing it as he has come into our family and added value.
Yeah.
He has made our family better. And I'm so thankful for that.
Well, I think you're off to a good start. I think you're doing a good job
Okay.
at this point.
Thank you, Lord.
Okay, so Brett, you've got 4 daughters.
Yep.
What have you learned about parenting girls that's different from boys? As a dad, what do you need to do?
Oh man, a lot more patience and a soft kindness words, not kind words. We had first was a girl, and then 2 of the triplets, and then the youngest, and they're all very, very different. And to Braxton's point with boys, they all need different things, and some, 1 or 2 very independent, and others not. And so, just trying to be intentional about what their needs are. I had this idea that I was scared to have a boy because I thought, okay, a boy, I think all the pressure's on me to like I could screw that up. And I think as I'm learning and realizing that probably there's more pressure on me for the girls, and that's sobering having 4 of them. So I don't always get it right. Lindsay tells me that she's never once heard you raise your voice, and I'm like, ooh, oh shoot, and have to go back and apologize, to the girls, mostly for my tone. Learning that's they pick up on the tone really more than what is being said, because they don't want to disappoint me or us, and so it crushes them to think that we are disappointed with them, and so. These are things that I'm, actively learning and realizing that I wasn't as aware of all of these things until really kind of joining this family and being behind and seeing you guys parent and seeing your kids and how Lindsay had the ability to watch her nieces and nephews grow up and you guys parent them, and so she's like, hey, what's going on? Like, why don't you just act like them? I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. So I would like to think I'm getting better every year, but trying my best to be sensitive to the girls.
You're raising great girls for sure.
Thanks.
They're a good reflection of their mom. So Tyler, you got 2 teenage girls.
I do. So I'm soliciting prayers constantly. No, same thing. And, my girls are twins, and this is like one of those nature versus nurture situations, both for the girls and the boys. And that we get to observe that these are just 2 unique individuals. They've had the same bedtime, same meals, same conversations. They're just different people. And I love that. And we've always intended to be intentional about treating them as individuals, even though we refer to them as the girls or the boys or whatever. Amelia and Caroline are individuals, and they have unique gifts and unique ways they think. And the interesting thing that I think you modeled really well, Dad, is kind of adapting the way that you communicated to each of us as kids and in-laws for our personality. I mean, you still have the same structure, but you kind of knew how to speak to different things that you saw in how we relate and how we communicate. And that's continues to be a learning process for me in knowing that the way that I speak to one of my girls is not going to be received the same way that I speak to the other. And that's okay. And I need to be mindful when I'm communicating with them and continuing to, of course, pray that as they're entering these consequential years in middle school is like a joy for everyone, I recall. Like not awkward at all. That we would progress through these years in a prayerful way that's supportive, that allows them to come through it, not the way that I came through it, but without extraordinary baggage of those years,
Right.
which is my great hope
Mm-hmm.
from them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I think one of the key things, whether it's in the middle school years or before, is that home is a place of refuge. You know, it's a safe place, and the kids go out, whether it's school and things they're involved in, and that the home can be a place where we found this out with our kids. Is sometimes we would get they could come home and just kind of because they were having to be something, you know, strong and tough out in the world, and then come home and you know, you have a choice as a parent to get offended by that or be like, you know, I'm getting all this attitude or da-da-da, when in reality what you got is them being able to let their hair down or just be
Right.
maybe
Safety.
yeah, the safety. There's stuff that maybe was pent up that they were trying to be all the things out here, but at home they could be this. And if we as parents don't overreact to that sometimes and let it be safe,
That's good.
which requires grace. And live in that place where you're. I think the tension of parent is constantly like, hey, what needed discipline, and what need and correction, and what needs me to just be a shoulder to cry on, or let them vent, and always holding that in tension is really. I mean, that's a tough. You know, I know I didn't always get it right. A place where I maybe thought, you know, required some discipline. You know, I really needed some grace.
I think that's the source of Lindsay and I's most of our arguments.
We might have hit probably on the parent argument between a couple. But always Glenn and I really wanting, you know, coming down at the base of it is this a safe place? And I think those middle school years are where you begin to kind of feel it the most. Is like, are they able to come home and know that home is just a place where I can just be myself and it's safe.
Yeah. So, married daughter now. That changes everything.
Really?
You know, you've got this other guy that you're glad that is there, but it changes the dynamic of your relationship with your daughter. So, speak to that just a minute. What have you had to navigate in that change?
Yeah, I think Glenn and I have tried to figure out how do we really fully let go. I mean, they're a family. It's there's decisions they're making for themselves, and so we try to respect that. Even today, though, I had a conversation with JD. I was like, hey, you know, I want to talk about your family values, and I want to talk about our family values. We really haven't talked about that, but and I don't want to just presume these on you and your family, but you know, and I know you come from a family who has values, and you've lived those out. And so, how do we join those together? So, beginning that kind of conversation to go, you're your own family, and yet you're also joining our family, and there's a bigger family, and there's values that have made the culture of our family. And so, how do we have those kind of conversations? So, respecting that in that way for their family. But there's something that I always watched you do and continue to watch you do with your daughters, who are now some age old. I won't say old there. And so as I watch my daughters, who are now 23 and 17, and they're not, you know, 6 and 7, where it's like, oh, great, come hop on daddy's lap. And da-da. And so I've seen an awkwardness that can happen in dads with daughters as their daughters get older. And they're like, oh, she's a woman now. You know, do I still kind of hold her and hug her? And what do I do? And I watch you just always hug Lisa and Lindsay just like they were your little girls, you know. And we had this yesterday. This happened where Evelyn, who's 17, comes over and she was sitting on my lap, and I was just hugging her, and I said, "Hey," and Lindsay was doing so. I said, "Hey, will you do this with Dad, even when you're Lindsay's age?" And she said, "Well," she said, "as long as I see Lindsay do that with Papa, then I will." And I said, "Lindsay." And Lindsay came over and cuddled on your lap, and you held her, and I said, boom, proof right here. We got it. You will do this when you're X years old. And just, you know, the affection, the love, and not being, oh, this got awkward. And now she's married. She's got a husband. No, I still come up. I told her today, I gave her a big hug, and this is now Olivia. And I said, you know, I'm watching you. You're such a great wife. Yeah. And I'm watching you be a great wife, and I'm hugging her and loving on her. And so, I don't know, we're trying to do our best and just trying to lead with love.
I think there's nothing more important, no matter how old you are, than an affirming word from a dad.
Absolutely.
You know, I remember my dad telling me when I had 4 kids, and he would tell me that he loved me and give me a hug and a kiss on the cheek. It still meant something to me. And so that's what I try and model for each of you. So I want to say, as we sort of end this time together, I want to sum this up with a word, just a phrase, maybe that would apply to everything we talked about today, whether you're a leader in business or you're leading in your home and your family. With God, the journey is the destination. You see, everything we talked about today is God's in the middle of the journey with us, and he's in the middle of the journey with you. And so if you'll see it that way, then you don't have to be anxious or frustrated or irritated because of the situation you're in. God's there with you in it, and he's going to bring you through it. And he wants to do that. And so with God, the journey is the destination. And let me pray for you. Lord, thank you for our friends today. Thank you for this time that we've shared as men in the Lane family. Lord, thank you for our family, for our children, for our wives, and for your work in our lives. And I pray that every person who views this video would be encouraged and challenged that they can replicate these things by simply looking to you, inviting you into their life, and trusting you, even in difficult situations. I pray your blessing over everyone in Jesus' name. Amen. See you next time.